Resuming. Hello there, and welcome back to part three of our discussions around the emotional fallout from the classroom. And this is for teachers who might be struggling and thinking about whether they want to stay within education, or maybe they're considering leaving. Maybe they want to go into different careers, or maybe they're looking at staying in education, or might want to be considering something like a franchise package or go into a tutoring agency to become an independent tutor. So today I've got Rebecca Maloney with me, and she's from the Career Garage. So tell us a little bit about you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Georgina. Yes, I am Rebecca Maloney. My company is Career Garage, and that's been born from a background of nearly 30 years in recruitment. So, for the last 4 years, I've been helping people either get into their sector of choice or leave something that they've been doing for many years to look for alternative careers, or, like you said, even look at going down the setting up themselves, becoming self-employed, or going down the franchise route. There's lots of options beyond the classroom, but it can seem very scary at the investigative stage.
Okay, and let's go to our first point then. So, classroom to career freedom. So, some people are thinking about self-employed, some people are thinking of staying as an employee. But if we think about those emotional differences, not necessarily the actual practical differences of money and stuff, let's think about those thoughts really. If people are going to stay as an employee but working outside education, how might that feel for them?
It's offering a safety blanket. If someone's put an application in that's gotten them an interview, that's gotten them the job offer, then that company is seeing something in that person. So people kind of might need to fight the imposter syndrome initially, but be very open-minded and just willing to absorb and learn everything. Even the stuff that you don't have to learn that can be palmed off into the admin office. It's worth bobbing into the admin office and picking up a few tips and upskilling that way. It might not be in your job description, but be involved in it, because that's going to expand your CV from that first job into what might come then further along the line. Just be open minded and learn, learn, learn. You've got the safety blanket of knowing that if all goes well, you've got a salary that will go into your bank at the end of each month, your tax and NI is dealt with, and you can then get on with hopefully enjoying your social life and a bit of disposable income. On the other hand, self-employment, you're no longer going to be micromanaged. You've got to do that for yourself. And I think a lot of teachers have had their life's worth of micromanagement up until this point. So self-employment can be really liberating and empowering from that angle, especially when in your day job you might be currently being told to do lots of things that you don't 100% believe in or you're not comfortable in doing. All that's gone away when it's self-employment, and you can truly be your authentic self and do everything the way that you want to do it. And you might be right that that might not lead to a lot of money initially, but it doesn't half lead to a lot of emotional freedom.
Yeah.
The weight off your shoulders is huge, knowing you don't have to get into your car on a morning and travel to somewhere that you don't want to be anymore. Whew.
I can completely agree with that. The choices that I have as a self-employed tutor are fabulous, especially from an education perspective. If I see an individual child that I'm working with and I want to suggest to the family that they might need to consider maybe a different diagnosis or an additional diagnosis or look down the diagnosis route, or if I want to suggest a different type of intervention in the education sector, that's lovely to be able to have that freedom. And I think what you were saying there about those career freedoms aren't always there, are they? If you carry on even in a different sector and remain as an employee. So let's think about the classroom challenges that you're hearing about from the teachers that contact you. I mean, we've spoken ourselves, haven't we, about um, senior management in education are considering outcomes of the children. And we've also spoke about the teachers' outcome. The teachers are less of an outcome as well. That they're not focusing on the teachers' well-being necessarily. I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? What other things
Yeah.
are you sort of observing from teachers? when they're having discussions with you about career changes?
I would say multiple ones. They've said they just feel undervalued, micromanaged, their time's taken up by stuff and not actually teaching, and also, look, actually, to the ticking boxes a lot of the time. It's very prescribed work. You do A, B, and C, and that's it. Don't you dare touch D or E. It's not in your remit, kind of thing. And I feel that sometimes it feels a bit disjointed. And the reason that people got into teaching in the first place ends up not being the reality in quite a lot of instances. And I
Mm,
do agree, sometimes changing school could be the difference between night and day. Um, you could be in an environment with a toxic work environment where no one is happy going into work all week, let alone on a Monday morning. And that mood comes down to you eventually. You
mm.
might not have ever been feeling like that, but if you're surrounded by others feeling like that, it's very quick to catch that mood.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think when you've fallen out of love with the thing that you've always wanted to do, um, I think for your own sanity, it's time to then, you've spent your career so far looking after others, helping others to develop and grow. Um, is it not time to maybe do that for yourself at some point in life?
yeah. So we've also spoke about things like burnout. The
Yeah.
negatives and positives we've spoken about progress, haven't we, as well? And also you've touched on a little bit the lack of autonomy now. This
Yeah, I think progress is actually a negative for a lot of people within the education system because, yeah, amazingly flattering to be considered for any promotion anywhere. It's brilliant. And yeah, and on paper, teacher, deputy head teacher, that's the route you take. But that route takes you out of the classroom, and that route takes you away from the thing that you were passionate about doing when you became a teacher.
mm,
I always think that about, like the police as well. It's like you want to get out there and get into the danger zones, and then you do that really well, and then you're given a desk. And I just always find it a little bit. Is that someone's best skill sets? Is that someone being used in the right way for their passion and for their own mental well-being again? Because again, it becomes stats, analysis, figures, report writing, and is it helping at the grassroots, which is kind of, I think, why most teachers teach.
yeah, yeah. Again, that is the joy of being a self-employed tutor, in the sense that you have your own destiny. You can make twists and turns within your career, and you can go in different directions. If you decide that you want to sort of now specialize in supporting children with dyslexia, or you then want to go off on a tangent and go down the dyscalculia route, you're totally free to go and do that CPD. You haven't got to ask anybody's authority to do that. So, are teachers looking to stay in education, or are they looking to go out into commerce?
I've had several clients who were ready to just walk away from teaching altogether, and a lot of our sort of career coaching session was around alternative ideas and picking out the transferable skill sets and the soft skill sets that most teachers have actually got an abundance of,
Mm,
but they're not communicating those skill sets in CVs and in applications. It's not their big focus. It's just something that they do. It's not something that they talk about on a CV or see the value in. Um, so I do speak with a lot of people who are very tentatively pondering, is this something I can or can't do? And it might be that someone considers supply teaching for the first get out of actual teaching. So you're still doing the thing you know and you love, but you're walking away from the politics. I used to recruit supply teachers, and the best ones were who really had it sorted were the ones they would give the work in the morning that really needed the marking and the time consumption from the teacher. And instead of going to the staff room at lunchtime, they would get the marking done. The afternoon would be more question and answer stuff verbally, more engaged stuff, that kind of thing. There was nothing to mark. And when the school bell went, the supply teacher left with the pupils. That can just be a way of getting some breathing space without also the added pressure of what is it I'm going to do? So we've stepped back from if anything, people love seeing you when you turn up because they need you. You're not the same old face in the same old school every day. Like, oh, here's Georgina. Oh, you're right. It's like, oh God, here's Georgina. Let's get you to the classroom. So it's a whole different type of being. Again, you're not just helping the kids that day, you're helping that school massively. So the helping thing's still there. But if you can walk out of that school and the kids walk out of that school, that's when you can start filling your brain with your ideas and what's my next career. And is self-employment an option? And you could actually start building something up yourself and get it to a point where you can drop the supply down to 4 days a week and then concentrate on your side gig on the other day a week and just involve a bit of flexibility but not completely lose the safety net of a salary. So there's loads of options.
Yeah. So, transferable skills, I see so often teachers saying, what can I do outside of teaching? I think sometimes that you've just touched on a little bit, they don't recognize the everyday skills that they have and how they are. We all take our own skills for granted, don't we? Our everyday skill set. And they don't realize how those are transferable into industry, commerce, self-employment. But there's also a skills gap that they might have as well. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no worries at all. Depending on the skills gap, I mean, if somebody wanted to become a brain surgeon, there's going to be a massive skill gap, and back to education is going to be needed. You might actually find in a lot of instances there's not as big a skill gap as you think. Again, if you are marketing yourself in the correct way and explaining why you're wanting to get out of teaching and why you think you'd be a great fit for this role, if that new employer could also see the skills that you're bringing with them and then could invest in further training to enhance your new job role. I don't know of any companies that don't train new staff. Why
Mm.
would anyone not train new staff? So there's certain skills that can't be taught. So if someone's been teaching for years, we know straight away that they're reliable, that they've probably been turning up Monday to Friday. References are there to back that stuff up. Obviously, we know that some teachers do end up on long-term ill and leave for other reasons, but in general, there's no questioning someone's work ethic when they've come from that kind of a background. So you're already nailing off for the employer. Can I trust this person to be reliable and be this and be that and be the other? Yes, 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 yes. Not all of the candidates are going to have that from their previous job history. And maybe they've been jumping around in jobs because they've not quite found what they want. So even if a teacher's been in a few different schools, they've still got consistency from their career choice, which it still in its own way shows stability. They've not been teacher, dog walker, milk woman or man, office manager, back to teacher. There's a steady journey that's really followable. But if you think about in schools, who are you managing? You're managing yourself. You're managing a room full of very different, unique young people from very different backgrounds. Excuse me. Um, all the different learning abilities, all at different stages in their own education career, and you're managing that. You're probably managing a TA or two as well in that equation. You're probably liaising and engaging with the lunchtime assistants, especially if there's anyone who's been particularly naughty or there's an issue going on. That you're communicating that amongst the entire team. Whether that's letting admin know so it can be cascaded, whatever the system is in your school. So you're communicating again with a wide group of different people with different work titles. In the big world, that's called stakeholder management. So it's about looking at what are you doing day to day that actually has a title in the world. And that would be stakeholder management. You're keeping your children happy. You're keeping the parents of those children happy, hopefully, the TAs that are in your classroom happy. Then you've got your own colleagues, your own management team, your head teacher, the local authority. All these people are your stakeholders. So it's about identifying, again, that day-to-day stuff that you don't think about.
Yeah. We take so many skills for granted. So, regarding your support service, what do you offer? Tell us about if someone's coming to you.
All right, thank you. I would have a look at their CV. That would be the first port of call. So I can just follow their career, see what they've done to date. Um, I'd usually have a go at rewriting that quite early on. Again, just changing the wording on it. And what I would advise anyone that wanted to engage with me is maybe do this exercise themselves first, kind of give their CV a spring clean. What isn't really going to be needed in the real in the outside of education world. I was going to say real world, and that was really patronising and bad, but in the wider world, um, maybe even split off two CVs out of one. So have the stuff that you think you can take forward with you and the stuff you think you're going to be leaving behind. Maybe separate those two because that would give me something to work with. But it also gives the person a bit of a frame of mind to look at. If there were any tasks that you had to do 8 hours a day for the rest of your life, have a column for what you would love to do on the right hand side or on the left hand side. And then on the alternative side, what do you hope to never have to encounter or do again for as long as you live? Because we need to make sure that stuff is no longer on your CV. Your CV is about what do you want to be doing moving forward and being found by recruiters or employers for things that they need to find you for. You don't want to be getting found for the stuff that you don't want to do anymore.
True.
So I would work on your CV and help ask those questions and get that so it's a bit more of um, a, a commercial CV. Obviously, teaching is a big part of it. That's your job title. We're not going to change any of that stuff. We would then have an hour on Zoom, one to one, where I would explain what we've done with the CV and why it is as it is and what they need to do every time they apply for another job. A one CV does not fit all.
Yeah.
A one size CV does not fit all. I'd explain how AI is influencing behind the scenes. And this is a really valid point. A lot of people focus on, am I the best candidate? You're not going to find out unless you make yourself become the best applicant. And I help with that. And I also help with people using the power of LinkedIn. It's phenomenal. And if it's used correctly with a target and a purpose and a strategy, that can be your answer out of your current situation, whether that be employment or self employment. It's opening up a massive network of people who most of them will be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. So I'll get you using LinkedIn confidently and just help change people's mindset. Don't wait for the perfect job to appear on a job board. It's probably not going to happen. So let's work out what we want to do. What kind of companies do we want to work for? Let's approach them. There's loads of techniques we can use to be a bit. People think they're proactive because they've applied for 20 jobs in a week. But have they applied for 20 jobs in a week or have they just pressed the apply button 20 times? Would it not be better reaching out to 20 influential business owners that you'd be intrigued to work for, of companies that you'd want to work for, doing things in the community that would really sort of inspire you? Would you not want to use those minutes for pressing apply 20 times to actually craft an introduction and reach out to people on LinkedIn? So it's about getting brave,
Yeah.
giving people the rule book on what they can do, what they're allowed to do. All these people on LinkedIn are not in witness protection. They're on a worldwide public forum. And once you're connected to them, you've got access to their email address or their phone number, even. It's like, don't be shy. So, yeah, it's just about, honestly, I could keep people on LinkedIn for hours once they understand it.
I think it is about, I hate the fact, and I apologize because I'm newer in this world, but recruitment agencies, there's, I sometimes feel like they might have a very generic kind of view of things. They may not necessarily understand that person's CV, especially if not done a very good job of doing their CV. I think it's just going to be overlooked. I've just recently had this with my husband, looking to stay in his sector and getting him to do his CV again. And all he was doing was applying for those jobs that existed. Wasn't a lot of jobs in his sector either. And he'd actually got no follow-ups at all. He didn't want to take my advice about his CV at all. We slightly tweaked it. But I think prospecting is the thing to do. Go out there, not having to keep going through recruitment agencies. Like you say, be proactive, see something that you like, see a company that you like, and go for them and say, right, you might not have a job available at the moment, but this is my CV if something comes up. Because I think a lot of employers will respect that as well.
Yeah, and it's about making yourself really human.
Yeah.
And also, don't knock all the recruiters on LinkedIn. Yeah, some are following. If you look at a recruiter's life, I'll be very brief, but it's a sales game and
Mm,
they are very target driven. It's high targets. If your CV is not hitting the mark, and that recruiter is going to have to spend time drawing information out of you because it's not there in black and white, then absolutely the delete button's getting pressed. And why would a recruiter spend any more time on that process than you as the applicant have? So
yeah.
if all you've done is go apply, you can't have an issue with a recruiter that just goes delete. Whereas if you've applied and you've followed it up with a covering letter and you've explained yourself and you've acknowledged that there's gaps in your knowledge and your experience, but why you think you'd be able to learn those things quickly and why it's in your skill set still, you're at least going to get some communication going. But if you've just pressed apply, I'm just pressing delete, and
Mm,
it's that harsh. When a recruiter gets a CV, they should not need to ask a question. If they need to ask questions, your CV is not doing its job. They
yeah.
should want to ask you questions, and that's really different. There
Mm,
needs to be something in that CV that makes that recruiter go, I want to speak to Georgina right now. I hope she answers.
yeah.
And it's almost like, the X Factor, you could have 10 singers on stage, but there's only going to be that one that makes you go, yeah, next round. Same with
Yeah.
this. That's all a recruiter's doing. It's that harsh, but you can learn what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just feel like I've gone on a bit of a
No, it's so
recruiter
fine.
rant there, but
No, no.
um, recruiters want to fill jobs and they want the right candidate. So if a good CV or a good applicant or a good person crosses their path, they're going to work with them because that's payday for them.
Right. So let's carry on and think a little bit more about then the changes that there are between education and corporate language, because I know within the teaching world, we have a very specific type of language for things, reflective practice and metacognition, for instance, and things like that. Are sort of sometimes a surprise for people in the corporate world. We don't tend to use the same language. So there's very similar skills, aren't there, that we do as teachers that do transfer. So tell us a little bit more about that.
I mean, what you were just explaining there would fit in nicely with sort of coaching, training adults in the workplace. Um, and those phrases are not necessarily unheard of, but it can be worth like Googling or chat GPTing. A chunk of your CV could be that this is the first half of my CV. What adjectives or terminology could you use as alternatives to make it sound less education wise? I'm looking to move my career out of education, and use almost chat gpt as a digital soundboard. When I do my career coaching, I'm here as a human soundboard, but I'll still use chat gpt for things when I want to ask it questions, or if I'm putting a course together or putting some training material together or a presentation together. I wouldn't even contemplate doing any of that without ChatGPT anymore.
Yeah.
So any questions that you've got with this could be, here's my CV profile. I want to leave education. How do I make it relevant? And just let ChatGPT break it down and keep going back to it with follow-up questions. Uh, and it might ask you what industry are you thinking, and you might say, I'm not sure. Can you make any suggestions based on my CV? Really use ChatGPT as a human being, as a brilliant way to, well, number one, it might clear some of the questions in your head, but it might create some additional ones. Who knows? But either
Yeah.
way, it'll get your creative juices flowing. It'll also help with things like your LinkedIn profile, um, and just feeling better about yourself. Chat GPT's got a way of making you feel a hell of a lot better than you
Oh,
might
it
think
has.
on your own devices. So have a play about with it. Have fun with it. But let some personality come out as well. So that's something else. We're teachers and we have to deliver A, B, C, D, and E. That doesn't mean we can't do it in a personal way and have some like personality about it. So bring that through as well in the way that you write profiles and the way you interact on LinkedIn.
So we've spoken a bit, haven't we, about if a teacher wants to transition, say, out of education, going into commerce world, or staying within education but wants to be a business person themselves, like being like a franchisee of mine or something like that, or setting up their own tutoring business. We've talked about ways in which they can slowly transition those skills, haven't they, and how they can gain business knowledge.
Absolutely. Like we mentioned earlier about the supply teaching, get started, try and get you 5 days a week, try and get your calendar filled up. You're going to be working less hours than you are as a permanent teacher, and that frees up the time that you would have used for marking and planning, you can now use for planning your business or your escape route or your plan B or whatever you want to call it. If you want to step away from teaching altogether, but you know that you've got a wide depth of skill sets doing that, then there are independent training companies. Go into a business, you might be training first aid, you might be training health and safety, you might be training. There's a million subjects that companies engage training companies to go in and deliver for their workforce. If you think about the care sector, they're not all employing their own trainers full time. They're using a training company to come in, make sure all the manual handling and all of that's covered off. So it's going around, it's training adults in a more of an employment setting, but you can see where the fit is. You've also got companies that need trainers to go and floor walk. So if there's been changes in processes or changes in software or changes in the way that a company actually organises certain workflows, then they need individuals for a few weeks to be on that site and to be at hand to go and help each individual question and problem as they come up. You've got teaching within the private sector, not just restricted to the UK, and now the world's opened up.
Mm.
There's no reason why you can't be teaching kids in Dubai or the other side of the world, America. Um, it's just easier to access more opportunities with the power of LinkedIn and having a look at business press as well. What companies are doing what in your local area? Who's doing something that incorporates one of your hobbies or interests, because that's another way of not feeling like your next job is work. But if you want to stay within work, there's teaching within military boarding schools, depending on your own life. That it doesn't have to just be your local primary or secondary school that's kind of around the corner from your house. That again, there's a wider scope for where teachers can be used. And I can remember having a teacher who lived on a canal boat, and each term he'd let the school know. So he'd let me know I worked for an education agency. So he'd let me know that from September he was going to be in and around Stockport or the Northwest,
Ah.
and we'd contact the last office. So say he'd been doing work in the Midlands, and they'd electronically fire his file over to us, and then he'd use that term break to canal boat very leisurely between A to B, and then fix himself up and work in a different area for a term or two, and then he'd tootle off to his next location. And he really made teaching work for what he wanted to get out of life. I had another teacher that was purely doing supply because she wanted the 2 weeks of Wimbledon off, and she couldn't do that in a permanent job. And it used to annoy her every year. And also, you've got the flexibility of when you go away on holiday and things like that. So there's positives to supply teaching, and then options of other little businesses on the side. There's a lot of teachers who do what are called MLMs, which is multi-level marketing businesses. So there's a lot of teachers that are involved with like Tropic skincare, and they become ambassadors. It is an amazing product, and
Mm.
they feel it's really easy to tell their colleagues about it, and they're earning a little bit of money on the side and topping up the pension. I know a lot of people that do utility warehouse, and all of these kind of businesses are really great for teachers because there's one element where you need to go and get your customers, but the other element is you actually want to sign people up underneath you and join your team and join your journey and be on the same mission as you. And you get to then be their upline. So you're then training them and mentoring them. And so you're building your own thing on the side using the skill sets that you've got. And that is all information that can go on your CV as well. So, how different would be being a partner with Utility Warehouse, finding your own customers, doing quotes, converting those quotes? There's an element of sales about that, but there's
Mm,
also an element of account management, business development, running the social media campaigns if you're going to go down that route, going out and doing face to face appointments, holding stalls on a weekend where people can come and win 20k if they fill out a form and agree to get a quote done. All of that would make really good additional CV content away from the teaching, but something that you could be doing on the side and building up towards. It's just having chats with the likes of me or with yourself, Georgina, where we can see where, what is someone petrified about, and if that's solely going alone,
mm,
fine. Go down the franchisee route. A lot of teachers probably don't know a background on franchising or how that works either. So that gentle introduction conversation with yourself about franchising could be invaluable. Other people at that point might go, no, I'm not ready to do anything on my own yet, but I'm
mm.
not quite sure what it is. And that's when maybe a chat with me is needed and we start having those kind of brainstorming sessions. But anyone can do whatever they want with their life whenever they decide it's time to do something different with it. And it's equally exciting as it is terrifying.
Yeah, yeah. I know what you're saying there about those marketing skills and whatever. There's and business and accounts, and they're all things that we've not done as teachers. That if you're going to set up on your own in whatever line of business, crikey, you've got to have that that possibility to and skill to go out there and sell yourself. And if you are selling your own business as a tutor, you've got to understand your worth as well and recognize your worth and the value that you're putting on it for your session rate and things like that. But yeah, to be a franchisee, you don't need to necessarily have them right now. We can certainly help with those, and that's part of my franchise package to support people in that way. But it would be a good precursor, wouldn't it, if somebody was thinking of changing career? Would be a brilliant thing to do.
Absolutely.
So I know we've talked about transferable skills. Anything else that you want to add to that list there?
I would say as teachers, all of those things should be all over your CV.
Yeah.
That's what you are doing day to day. And I think if you look at that stuff and think, that is what I'm doing day to day, well, what other things are you not thinking about that you're also doing day to day? Because at the moment, if you think of all this as being like pieces of a jigsaw, you just need to chuck a few words and lines and sentences down on a piece of paper at this point. You don't need to go from education CV to commercial corporate CV overnight. But it will help if you can start thinking of what you're doing in different ways and working out what that terminology on it might be. So not only using, say, ChatGPT or myself, I would also suggest going on the job boards and just looking at jobs that might spark your interest. You might initially think, oh, there's not a chance I'd be able to do that. And you might be right. But just have a look at the words being used in there,
Yeah.
have a look at how it's being put together. Oh, and on that, let me just point out, we've talked about this in the past, and I always think it's worth a mention, Georgina. Um, Men will apply for jobs
Yeah.
when they're only hitting around 40-50% of the job spec requirements. Women won't apply for jobs until they're hitting around 90% of a job spec requirement. Why? What's happening here? I think men are more open-minded to thinking, well, I'll learn it once I've gotten started with it. Women are more likely to think, oh God, I'm not going to put my CV forward for that. I'm not good enough,
Mm,
and they'll own that I'm not good enough. Whereas men will be like, well, I might not know it now, but I will know it. And I think we need to be a bit more man about this as women at times. What I want to point out from a recruitment point of view is when an employer puts a job spec out, that is their dream wish. That is, if someone had a magic wand and I could create this person right now, these are all the things that I would really, really want to see in this person. We know magic wands don't exist. And we know that this person that can do all of this stuff, they might exist, but they're not applying for that job. They're applying for the job above it or the job above that one. Why would they go and take this job if they could do all of those things in that job spec? They wouldn't. Wouldn't be a challenge. Wouldn't be a pay rise. There wouldn't be anything in it for them. So no employer is expecting the perfect end product to apply for that job because it's not going to happen.
Mm.
So as long as you're around the, I would say 50 to 60% mark, and in which case you would highlight that 50 to 60, you would absolutely nail that 50, 60%, show that it's in your blood, in your workings, in your passion, in your head, it's all you think about, all of that 60%. The 40% you would cover in a cover letter. I know I haven't got A, B, C, and D, but years ago, I'd never stood in front of a classroom and spoken to 30 children. And during my teaching career, I've had to learn this, I've had to learn that, had to learn Zoom through COVID and start going online and being more digitally minded. Had to do this, had to do that, had to pivot, had to work differently. If that can't show flexibility, and you pull on all those different experiences to fill that gap of that 40 or 50%, because that gap is going to be made up by it being you.
Yeah, yeah.
And people like you and can go, I could work with her, I could work with him. Oh, wow, they'd be an amazing fit in with our team. That's when it becomes about personality and likability and
It does.
flexibility.
I had an exact same scenario 25 years ago, looking for jobs when I moved to Belgium. I walked the streets for 2 to 3 weeks, going through various recruitment agencies. I'd got a master's, I'd got a degree in law and human resource management and all sorts of things at that time. I was tooled up to do the right jobs. At the end, I got a job as a PA in the hotel company, not because I'd got any skills related to it. I think I just walked in and my face fitted. They gave me the job.
Yeah.
I'd got, God, 10, maybe 20% of the skills that they were looking for. I'd never done a job like it, but I learned on my feet and I really, really enjoyed it. But it's something actually that I'm going to talk about with a strengths coach actually in one of our next sessions about the dangers of profiling people for certain jobs, especially, I mean, I know I'm in the world of neurodivergence as well. We don't always have those clear skill sets, and we shouldn't necessarily always be saying it's black and white around these skills that we're looking for, because sometimes that recruitment sector doesn't always express itself well or recruit neurodivergent people well. There's still a lot of things that are behind there. And it's something that made me think a lot about that franchise that I want to offer is it is going to be, yes, can you teach and do you understand the thing that we are teaching? But it's also what your passion's going to be like and what your flexibility is like, what your ability is to gain those new skills. I hope to be able to put a business in a box package for people. So we will upskill them on the job. Right. Okay. I think that's all we wanted to offer for today, Rebecca, unless there's anything else you wanted to add right now.
No, you know me, I could talk for Britain if left unattended. So I think we've covered off quite a bit, and people can find us both on LinkedIn. And I've got a career garage page on Facebook and Instagram and the LinkedIn Facebook page. So hopefully you can find me if you want to. You don't have to speak. I put tips out quite regularly. If you go back through the back catalogue of my career garage page on LinkedIn, you'll find a hell of a lot of tips there.
Okay, thanks for that. Yep, and I'm Georgina Smith. Don't know if I said that at the beginning, actually. Yeah, so I'll be offering a franchise system around the Codebreakers dyslexia support package. And like I say, if you don't have to be experienced in dyslexia support, but if you've done phonics and all that sort of business, you don't have to be a primary school teacher, you could be a secondary school teacher. Again, you don't necessarily have to work in phonics. It's about the passion for the individuals who are neurodivergent and being able to teach, being able to support neurodivergent individuals and having that passion there. So again, you can contact me via that email. and we can just explore things. It's not something with me that you're going to make a one conversation decision about. It's a life-changing thing. So, anything else to add, Rebecca?
No, if anyone's in a turmoil about where they want to be and what they want to do, then we can also have an initial chat, and happy to advise. Um, yeah, we want happy people in work.
We're a long time there, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for your time, Georgina. I really enjoyed our conversation.
You know, it's been good. Thank you.
Take care.